Welcome to the solution video for the Pill Reminder Challenge. I've got the starter project open, so let's take a peek at our form itself, and let's run this just to see what it does. I mean, we've seen this already in the demo, but I want to go over it again. So we've got our pills to take. We need to fill this in with which pills we need to take. Now, the definition is that it's anything after the current time that we've not taken yet today. So, for example, it is not yet 11:45, but it is after 8 a.m. So this one's going to pop up, and so is this one, so is that one, and so is that one. So 4 of these 5 should be in this list over here because the time of day has passed, but we haven't taken them yet. Once we take them, they should go off the list. And then once we get to 11:45 p.m., that should then be over here as well. And that's going to happen when we hit the refresh button. So let's start by building a list that we fill in for this section over here, pills to take. So I'll stop this. I'll go to my code behind. We already have a binding list of pill model for medications. That's our all pills list box. So let's create another binding list. We'll actually just copy and paste this and just rename it. And we'll call this pills to take. And that will be this list over here. We can copy this as well. This format at least. But instead of all pills list box, it's going to be pills to take list box. Like so. And it's going to use the pills to take list. So there's my second list wired up, but it's empty right now, which is okay. We need to first populate the dummy data, which we have, and now we need to create a way to populate this pills to take list. So let's create a new method. And you know what? I'm going to put it on that button first. And that's this button right here, the refresh button. And the reason why is I want to make sure that this button works. And unless I change my date time on my computer, or if I wait for the time to tick over to where the next pill pops in, I'm not going to know if this button works. So let's start by making this button work by not populating it when the form first starts. That's just a little more of a test for me. So let's create the private method first. Private void populate pills to take list. All right, so let's create a list for now, a list of so we shouldn't worry about the date here either. So time of take dot time of day, so that just gets just the time of day, is greater than, and we're going to say, oops, less than date time dot now dot time of day. And we need to add our to list here, which that goes, that returns an IEnumerable. So that's the first part. And that will give us a list of all the items where the time of day is less than, the time of take is less than now. And what that means is that if it's 9 p.m. and this is 8 p.m., then we should have taken that pill already. Therefore, that then gets populated on the list. But we're not done yet, because what if we've already taken that pill? And that's where the second half comes in. We'll get to that in just a minute. But I first want to make sure this is going to work. So I have this list of pills. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this list to my medications list. So medications.clear. I want to clear it out first. Medications.add. And I'd have to do it one at a time if I did it this way. And normally if this was a list, we could say add range. The problem is there is no add range for a binding list. It's one of those kind of quirks. So let's do this instead. I'm going to say pills.forEach x, the arrow function. Then I'm going to say medications.add x. So for each pill in the list, add that to the medication list. You see what I did there? Now, I could have done this all in one. I could have actually not even had this list right here. I could have just said medications.where, and then at the end of this, did my for each. But I kind of like to have it in a couple different lines for a couple reasons. One is it makes it a whole lot shorter. So instead of having, this is already long, and it's going to get longer as we add that second where clause. And second, because I have it putting it into a list, and then I'm doing something with that list, I can put a breakpoint really easily here and see that list easily. Now you can still put a breakpoint and kind of step through until you find the right spot, but this just makes it easy. I put a breakpoint on line 43 before it does anything else. I can see my list of what's going to get added. So kind of personal preference there. You don't have to do this way. If you want to save a couple of cycles, then don't even create this list. Add it right to, using the for each, add it right to the medication list. But I'm just taking my list, and I'm doing a for each, and I'm saying for every item in the list, go to medications.add and add that item. Now let's see how this is going to work. So let's take this method. And remember, I'm going to create this button's event and call it here. That way, every time you hit refresh, it should be that it makes sure that the list is up to date. And the only thing I messed up is I pointed to the wrong spot, it looks like, because now this list has 4 items. Let's go ahead and change that. So I have pills to take list box. Data source is pills to take. But I'm clearing out medications. Aha. Hopefully you spotted that. I clear out medications, not pills to take. Let's try it again. So refresh, and now there's the 4 pills to take. Now I didn't order these, and I probably should. Let's order them by their time. So before we do anything else, I'm going to order them. So just for now, I'm going to change this right here from list of pill model to var. One of the things that var helps you with, I know I usually don't use it, but var helps you when the type changes enough that you have to keep changing that. So let's just do that. That way I can get rid of toList for now and do this instead, where I say where. You can keep chaining these things together, which is also very nice. Where, I'm sorry, not where, order by, there we go. We're going to say again, let's do x, the arrow function, or the equals greater than, and we'll say x dot, and this is where we get to choose which column we want to order by. We want to order by, let's go with time to take. Oops. There we go. Time to take. And now it should be that everything else stays the same except for my for each is now yelling at me because it says I order enumerable. That's a problem. So now I can do toList. The end of that. And now it's hopefully working just fine. Let's run this. Notice our list is out of order. It's PM, AM, PM, AM, PM. If I hit refresh, 8 a.m., 9:30 a.m., 2:45 p.m., and 6:15 p.m. Those are the pills I need to take. So that list seems to work. The problem is I haven't said I want to take this pill. And so we want to make sure that when I do, it marks it as taken, and then it also takes it off this list when I hit refresh. So let's start by wiring up the take this pill. And the reason why is because if I wire this up first, then I know whether or not the change I make will also fix this box for the refresh, because I actually have a different value there. So let's create this button right here, take this pill. And so what we'll do here is whatever is selected in the pills to take list box, we're going to grab that. So again, I'm going to use var for now. Actually, no, I'm not. Pill model. And this is the selected pill equals pill model. And it is going to be the pills to take list box dot selected item. And that's going to cast that item back to the pill model type. Because right now it's listed as an object because it just says I can store anything you want. I know that this is actually a list of pill model. Therefore, each individual item is a pill model type. So now that I have the selected pill, what I can do is say selected pill dot last taken equals date time dot now. Now, one thing to note real quick here is that date time dot now, that is local time, local on your machine. If this were a web app that you're doing this on, you would not want to use date time dot now because that is the time on the server, which can change. It can actually change, if you're in like Azure Cloud, then it can change rapidly possibly. So you really don't want to rely on a local time for anything but when you're working on an app like this where it's on their machine. So everything relates to the user and where they're at, which is the same place the computer's at. Therefore, local time is fine and great and easier. But for anything else, you'd want probably UTC time, and you want to mark them as such so that everybody knows that we're working off the same playbook, so you can then convert UTC time into whoever's local time is viewing it. Okay, but for this, just note that datetime.now works because this is a desktop app. Okay, so now we have the pill marked, and that's all we have to do because the selected pill, that's just, remember when we deal with objects, that's really just an address to the house. Talk about the idea that a class is a blueprint for building houses, and every instance is a house that was built using that blueprint. And the variables that we store these class instances in are actually just storing the street address for the house. And so if we pass that street address around, that doesn't mean we're copying the house. We're just passing around an address. And so everyone who makes modifications, like right here, it'll reflect everywhere because it's the same house. So that's just a little object-oriented lesson there. So now we have this updated. Now we should see a difference if we hit refresh, except for the fact we haven't actually updated that link statement. So right now we have, let's unpin this. We have a quite complicated statement, so let's go ahead and at least make it a little shorter. So now we have the medication list where the time to take dot time of day is less than, we can actually say less than or equal to, since the second of would be an issue there, the time of day of now. And just so you know, time of day gives just the time, not the date. Doesn't care about the date. So comparing these two would work even if the dates were different. Now, we could also do another where clause if we wanted to, or we can do inside this the same where clause. Meaning we could do another where clause right here. I prefer to do is I say where, so I'm going to do another where clause. I have a first where clause, which filters the list down some. List. Let's see if this logic will now clean up our app a little more. So first we refresh. We're going to select the white one at 245 and say take pill. Now it didn't seem to do anything, but that's because we don't have this method call being made down here when we take the pill. But let's hit refresh. And now that 245 is off the list because we took it today. We can do the same thing with the 8 a.m. And now we just have 2 pills left to take today. So our medication list doesn't change. It is what it is. We have to take 5 medications in a day. Therefore, we have 5 in our list. But the pills we need to take right now changes based upon what we've already taken today and what time it is. And that covers the basic or the goal of this challenge. That's a basic goal. But there is the bonus challenge. We want to go ahead and tackle that as well. The bonus challenge takes it up another notch and says, you know what? I hate that refresh button. Let's go ahead and take that away entirely and make sure that list is always updating behind the scenes in some way to make sure that, when it comes time to take a pill, it pops in the list right away instead of waiting for us to hit the refresh button. Because think about it. If we hit the refresh button, we forget to hit the refresh button until like 9 o'clock at night. Well, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 pills to take. Or actually, I missed that one. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those 4 will need to be taken when you hit the refresh button. And that's not really how you should take pills, probably. There's probably a reason why it says you take the big one at 8 a.m. Because maybe that gets you through the day. I'm not sure. But whatever the case, we're going to miss that until 9 p.m. if we don't hit the refresh button. So let's take this refresh button away. We're just going to hide it essentially, or just ignore it. And I'm going to wire up something else to make sure that this continually gets refreshed. Now, the best way I can think of to do this is to set up a timer. So let's do that. Read-only timer. And we're going to call this timer. So So we got this little timer as the Windows form timer is actually what we're going to be using, which is a little different than we've used in the past, but that's okay. So we set up this timer. Now we need to come over here in our, once we set up our dummy data, we can come down here and say that the timer equals new timer. We've got to set up the, you know what? Let's go ahead and change that from the system.form.timer, which I'm not a big fan of, but I mean, it would work, but let's change it over. Now we have a namespace conflict right now because I want the one in system.timers.timer. So I'm going to call it that, system.timers.timer. Since it's a conflict between that and Windows Forms, no problem. I'll get the full name and then I'm not stepping on toes anymore. Now I do have to give it the full name down here as well. But this way I can use the more granular and more controllable timer. Can I set it for 1 second? Now, really what I want to do is when I'm done testing this, I'll set it for 1 minute. But 1 minute's an awful long time to wait, especially when you're trying to make sure this is working. So I'm going to set it to 1 second instead. And so it's going to check every second. Now I'm also going to set the auto reset to true. And then let's also wire up a timer.elapsed event. And this event is going to be I'll tab for now. I'm going to change this name though. So I'm going to call it the let's call it on timer elapsed. It's actually a suggestion by one of the people in the YouTube channel. Different video I did, and I kind of like it, so we're going to use it. So on timer elapsed, we'll call this method right here that every second, it's going to call this method. So what's this method do? Well, one of the stipulations we have is we don't want that window to keep refreshing and losing our place, because that's going to be kind of annoying. So we need to make sure that we're not just clearing everything out. So we'll do things a little bit differently than we have in the past. So we have this method down here where we grab, here's the pills that need to be on a list. I'm going to keep this list. I'm going to copy this. Now, yes, I'm repeating myself, and one of the big tenets is dry. Don't repeat yourself. So I'm going to look to refactor this at some point, but for right now, I'm having 2 different ways of doing it. I want to keep both so you have both options. I wouldn't keep both in a final application. I would refactor out and take out this one and just delete it because I want the automated way instead. So just so you know, I am repeating myself, but there's a reason. So now I have this list of pills. And this list of pills represents all the pills that I need to take today that I have not yet taken today. So what I want to do is I want to do a for each. And I will say this is a pill model for each pill in pills. It's going to loop through every pill on my list. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the pills to take. If pills to take dot contains, here's a cool thing. We can say, does it contain this pill? Now remember, if pill to take dot contains, if it says I'm comparing this pill, which is a new variable name, but remember it's just the address, it's not the actual house itself. So I say, does this house, which here's the address of it, does this house also reside in your list? If it does, so let's just be explicit here, equals true. So if pill to take contains this pill, that's true, then what I want to do is nothing. So I actually want to change it to false. So if it does not have that pill, then what I do is pills to take dot add So right now, nothing is in this list, which is interesting. Let's find out why nothing is in this list. And now everything is in this list, and that's not right. All right, I think there's one thing I forgot to do. Did you catch it? Gotta start the timer. Otherwise, nothing happens. And still nothing happens, interestingly enough. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put a breakpoint on our timer elapsed. And notice it does hit it. Let's mouse over our pills to take, and that says 5. So we do have 5 pills to take. Which pills to take? We've got wired up. We know that's wired up. So the question is, why is that not finding anything? Why is it not doing anything? Well, let's step through the code and see what we get. So it's going to go through the where clause. It's going to start filtering out. Let's actually step over this. Let's actually, run down to here. Oops, take the breakpoint off there. There we go. So now we have a list of 5 pills to add to our list if it's not already there. And we're running into the problem of this timer is getting hit over and over and over again. And so it's never getting through this whole list. It's kind of getting jammed up a little bit. So let's hit stop here for a minute. So this is where a little bit of experimenting comes in, because for whatever reason, this is not working the way we expected to. So I'm going to turn off my timer temporarily. I'm going to grab this source code. I'm going to come down here to my button, which I'm going to get rid of, but the populate pills to take button. I'm going to comment this out. I'm going to paste in instead this the code that was in the timer's tick event. So we're going to trigger it manually and see if the manual trigger does anything different, because it may be a threading issue. So now at this point in the night, it should be that all 5 things are listed. So I hit refresh, and yes, all 5 things get refreshed and listed and in the correct order. So that means that the code works, which I'll get rid of down here. I'm going to uncomment this right here. And come up here and say that this code works, but it looks like then the issue is actually one of which thread it's on and whether or not that triggers the binding list to refresh. So I'm going to do this. I'm not a big fan, but I'm going to try the timer, which remember is the Windows Forms timer. So let's take off this as well. I'll have to comment out this as well. At Windows Forms timer. Let's see if that, since it is on the Windows form, will make a difference when it comes to displaying on the form UI. All right, so let's try this again. And now you can see that the white one pops up at 12:15 a.m. I had to make some modifications to the list because I passed over the midnight threshold, and so there's nothing show up on the list for a minute, which kind of gave me a little bit of a heart failure because I knew this should work. So it does. It's just that it has to work with the Windows timer, not the system.timers, because of the UI thread. And threading can be a real difficult thing to work with if you're not careful. So this way we kind of gave in a little bit and did it with the Windows timer, but this way is designed to work with the Windows form. So we're good with that. Okay, so now we have this entered. Now what you need to see is make sure that it actually goes over to the next item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this. I'm going to modify one of these here. Let's modify this one right here. I'm going to say that it is, let's go with 27 a.m., which right now it is 26 a.m. So I'm going to let it sit here for just a minute, literally, and we'll see if it doesn't take over when we hit to the 27. They should pull this one right here over to our list. Any second now. There we go. So now it's on the list. I didn't touch anything. It just popped in. So that means that our list is refreshing by itself. We don't need this button right here. And as we take pills, they should go off a list, and they don't, which is interesting. So we're going to have to work on that code right there, because that should have taken it off the list once and there's the refresh, took it off the list, but the tick didn't. So let's find out why that is. So let's start it again, and both will pop up a list. I'm going to hit the take pill on the white one and wait for just a second, make sure it doesn't go off the list by itself, but it hasn't so far, which is interesting. Let's find out why it's not going off the list. Well, the reason why is because here I have an add if it is already on the list, or not on the list. But I don't have a remove if it shouldn't be on the list. So how do you figure out a remove? Well, I think the way I do that is another for each. So I could do a for each dot where and do that, or I can just do a for each like this. I kind of like spelling it out just because it makes it a little more clear. But in this case, I'm not going to do, the collection's not going to be pills. Instead, it's going to be pills to take. So that's the pill list we currently have. So that's the list of pills where in that list box on the left. So I'm going to say if, I'm going to do a check here, if, I'm going to do this backwards from the previous one. So pills dot contains pill equals false. So I'm flipping the script here and saying if you don't find the pill from this list in my pills list, that's the ones I should be taking, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say pills to take also do a for loop instead of a for each and go backwards, not forwards, backwards. And that will also work. Let's look at this and make sure this works. So I'm going to run it again. And I've got my 2 items here. I'm going to say take pill. And now I have just 1. Now there's a pause there because it has to wait for that timer to tick over again to the next second. If that's a problem, we can, in the take pill, go ahead and remove that item from the list. That's probably a more efficient way of going about it, but this way shows that in fact our query is working the way we intended it to. In fact, it also showed that it wasn't working the way we intended it to when it came to removing things. So that's one way of going about it, is doing a to list. Now let's just actually comment this out, and I'll show you the other way as well. Oops, there we go. So we can do for, instead of I being 0, we're going to say that I is going to be equal to the pills to take dot count. Okay, so it's going to be and -1. Because remember, the count is going to be, if there's 10 items in the list, it's going to be 10, but the actual numbering of it is 0 through 9. So, and then I should always be greater than or equal to 0. It's going to count down. And don't forget, the last thing to do is change the I++ to I-. So it's a little more complicated to do it this way, but it does save you some memory because you're not creating a whole new list to copy into it. So now we can bring our same logic here. So if, and instead of saying, we can say pills dot contains, but we can't say pill because we don't have that. We can say pills to take at position I equals false. Then pills to take dot remove. And I believe there's a remove at, and there is, and the index is I. So we're going to reference everything by the index and count down, and that should work as well. Let's make sure it does. So take pill, wait for it, and it's gone. The reason why it works is because when counting down, if we remove an item, we're not trying to skip over that. See, if we counted up and we removed the second item, which is 0, then 1, then 2. Okay, so the second item is the index 1. If we remove index 1, what happens to the item in the 2 slot? Well, it becomes index 1. So that's a problem. We had a weird ordering thing, and it's going to get an index out of bounds, and it's just going to be a mess. So by counting down, if we remove index at position 1, well, what's I, which is 1, minus 1? Well, it's 0. Was item 0 still there? Yes, because we haven't touched it yet. So counting down works where counting up does not. So now what we have is a fully working application where it automatically refreshes. We don't need this button anymore. When we take a pill, it takes it off the list, and it only shows us the pills that we have to take today. In this case, I had 2 pills to take today, but now I've taken both of those pills, and it's waiting. It will just sit there and keep chugging along until it hits the next pill, and it will pop it on the list. Then I just hit take pill and I take it, and it goes off the list until tomorrow at this time. Okay? And that is the bonus challenge. A little more tricky than the basic challenge, but that's what the bonuses are all about, is kind of pushing you to those limits to figure out things like which timer to use and how to deal with threading and all those things that really do pop up in the real world that you might not do in practice or might not see if you're just practicing one little piece. So this is a little bit bigger of a challenge this week, but I wanted to get you kind of putting a couple of these things together and see how they fit. Okay, I hope you liked it. Thanks for watching.